Second door thinking. The Path to Ideas No One Else Sees, written by Ronnie Rowland. Published by Growth Literacy Lounge. Most people spend their lives standing in line at the same door, chasing the same dreams, solving the same problems in the same predictable ways. They don't realize it's not the door that's broken, it's the way they see the world. Dead-end success is doing ordinary things extraordinarily well, said motivational legend Jim Rohn. But what he didn't say, and what this book is here to reveal, is that true success often means finding a different door entirely. Second door thinking isn't about working harder at the obvious. It's about seeing what others miss. It's about stepping off the well-trodden path and daring to ask, what if there's another way? It's about noticing the alleyways, the hidden entry points, the overlooked gaps shimmering just outside the spotlight. This book isn't about rejecting hard work or abandoning proven wisdom. It's about awakening the part of you that was never meant to follow blindly. It's about equipping you to find opportunities where others see dead ends, to create solutions where others see problems, to build futures others are too afraid to imagine. You won't find complicated theories here. You won't be buried in jargon or suffocated by 10-step plans. Instead, you'll be invited into a new way of seeing, a lens that sharpens your instincts, stretches your creativity, and emboldens your courage. You'll meet ordinary people who discovered extraordinary outcomes, not because they had more talent or resources, but because they dared to believe there was more than one way forward. The doors no one else sees aren't reserved for the lucky few. They're available to anyone willing to lift their gaze from the obvious, ask better questions, and keep moving even when the map runs out. If you're ready to stop waiting for permission, if you're ready to stop asking where the line forms, if you're ready to stop banging harder on the front door and to start finding the second one, you're exactly where you need to be. The journey starts now. Chapter 1. The Front Door Lie. Why the Obvious Path is Overrated. By the time Daniel graduated from college, he had perfected the art of following instructions. Study hard. Get good grades. Apply to the biggest, most prestigious companies. He did everything by the book, every checkbox neatly ticked. When he landed a job at a top consulting firm, it felt like confirmation that he had chosen the right door, the one everyone said led to success. But 2 years in, he found himself staring at the ceiling every night, hollowed out, wondering why reaching the dream felt so much like losing himself. Daniel had charged through the front door like everyone else, only to discover it led to a crowded room of disillusionment. The world makes the front door look inviting. It's bright, obvious, and endorsed by experts, family, and society itself. It says, this is the way. Follow the steps, do what's expected, stay in line, and success will be waiting on the other side. The problem is that a promise often crumbles under reality. Crowds surge toward the obvious entrance, bottlenecking opportunities until only a few squeeze through. For most, the front door doesn't deliver freedom or fulfillment. It delivers conformity, exhaustion, and an aching sense that something important got left behind. Second door thinking starts with rejecting the myth that the front door is the only way in. The front door is built for the masses. It caters to the median, the safe bet, the predictable outcome. True breakthroughs, whether personal or professional, almost never happen there. They happen when someone notices the side entrance, the cracked window, the forgotten back alley. The second door isn't advertised. It doesn't have a flashing sign. It requires you to stop, question, and look deeper. Daniel's real breakthrough didn't come from trying harder at his corporate job. It came the night he stayed up sketching a small app idea, something that helped freelancers organize projects better. He wasn't aiming to change the world. He was just following a thread of curiosity that led away from the main entrance everyone else was fighting to get through. 2 years later, that side project grew into a thriving startup, allowing him to leave the corporate grind behind entirely. His future wasn't behind the obvious door. It was waiting behind a second door, and no one else had noticed. Second door thinking isn't about being reckless or rejecting all structure. It's about questioning assumptions. It's about realizing that when you only follow the obvious path, you inherit the obvious outcomes built for the average person, not for the extraordinary one hidden inside you. It's understanding that safe is often just a synonym for crowded, and secure can easily become stagnant. Next time you're presented with a well-trodden path, pause. Look around. What if the opportunity you're seeking isn't at the front of the line, but tucked quietly around the corner? What if your real chance isn't in doing more of what everyone else is doing, but daring to do something no one else even thought to try? Daniel's story isn't unique because he was lucky. It's powerful because he dared to believe there might be another way. He didn't find his future by pushing harder at the obvious door. He found it by stepping back, scanning the walls, and asking the question that opens up whole new worlds. Where's the second door? The truth is, your greatest opportunity probably isn't waiting behind the door everyone's rushing toward. It's behind the one only you are brave enough to notice. And noticing that door, learning how to find it again and again, is where your real adventure begins. The front door often leads to crowded, conventional outcomes. True breakthroughs happen when you look for hidden, alternative paths. Courage to question the obvious opens doors others can't see. Where in your life have you been pushing on a crowded front door instead of looking for a second one? Identify one area today where you're following the obvious path, and brainstorm 3 unconventional alternatives, no matter how crazy they seem. Chapter 2. Second door thinking. Seeing what others miss. When Clara walked through the cobbled streets of Lisbon, she wasn't looking for a hotel. She was looking for a local experience, something no chain could replicate. Hotels were polished, safe, predictable, and entirely forgettable. That night, she stayed in a stranger's spare room, a transaction made possible by a fledgling service called Airbnb. Years later, as the company grew into a global force, Clara would marvel at the simplicity of it all. Someone had seen what no one else noticed: millions of empty rooms, millions of travelers hungry for authenticity. Where others saw impossibility, they saw a second door. Second door thinking is about rewiring the mind to notice the cracks in the walls everyone else walks past. It's about stepping back from the obvious and asking, what is hiding in plain sight? Most people move through life with tunnel vision, locked onto conventional options. They don't see the back doors, the side entrances, the overlooked gaps shimmering just beyond their line of sight. But the second doors are always there, waiting for someone brave, or curious, enough to find them. The obvious path is a gravitational pull. It's seductive because it offers clear steps, a map handed down by others: go to school, get a job, climb the ladder, retire. In business, it's build a product, find customers, outspend competitors. But second-door thinkers interrupt that gravitational pull. They ask questions that shatter assumptions. Why do we need our own properties to host travelers? Why should movies only be watched in a rental store? Why must art only hang in galleries? They don't accept the map, they redraw it. When Reed Hastings founded Netflix, the rental store model was king. Late fees were a given. Physical trips to the store were part of the routine. Yet he noticed something. The real product wasn't the VHS tapes, it was access to entertainment. The delivery method was arbitrary. What if convenience, not inconvenience, was the starting point? What if entertainment could come to you, not the other way around? That was the second door no one else had seen yet. While competitors fought over who could stock more shelves faster, Hastings walked quietly through a door that would eventually leave them all behind. Training yourself to see second doors isn't about working harder. It's about seeing differently. It's realizing that every locked front door has adjacent possibilities no one talks about. It's understanding that the world is layered in unspoken assumptions, and every assumption is an opportunity hiding in plain sight. Clara's Lisbon experience wasn't just about lodging, it was about connection. It was about humanizing travel again. That realization didn't come from market research or data models. It came from noticing a simple truth others ignored. People want to feel at home even when they're far away. The second door was empathy, disguised as inconvenience. The challenge is that second doors often look like risks, not rewards. They aren't paved with guarantees. They require you to trust your eyes when the crowd insists there's nothing to see. They demand that you stay curious, even when others settle for obvious answers. They invite you to play in the gray space between how it's always been and what if. Standing at any crossroads, you have 2 choices. You can sprint toward the flashing neon entrance that everyone else is fighting to reach. Or you can slow down, scan the edges, and look for the door no one else believes exists. You can trust that hidden just outside the spotlight is the opening meant for you, and only you. Second door thinking isn't a one-time event. It's a lifelong lens, a muscle that strengthens every time you refuse to take reality at face value. The world's greatest breakthroughs didn't come from brute force, they came from noticing. From daring, from walking through the doors others were too busy, or too afraid to see. The second doors are still there, waiting. The question is, are you willing to look? Most people miss second doors, because they fixate on the obvious path. Breakthroughs come from questioning assumptions and seeing hidden possibilities. Noticing second doors requires courage, curiosity, and patience. Where are you blindly following an obvious path without stopping to search for a second door? Today, identify one routine area of your life, work, habits, relationships, and ask, what hidden opportunities am I not seeing? Chapter 3. The Art of Asking. What if there's another way? At 17, Elijah started building robots in his garage, using scraps from abandoned appliances and discarded electronics. His friends marveled at his ingenuity, but teachers scolded him for not following the proper design plans. One afternoon, while struggling to fix a circuit that wouldn't cooperate, Elijah stared at the tangled wires and muttered, "What if this isn't even the right way to connect it?" That small, rebellious question sparked a new idea. He reimagined the entire system, bypassing the flaw, and for the first time, his creation whirred to life. Years later, Elijah would credit that moment, more than any textbook, with igniting his career as an inventor. It wasn't superior knowledge that unlocked his success. It was the habit of asking, what if there's another way? Second door thinking begins with questions that challenge the framework everyone else accepts without blinking. The reason most people never find the hidden door isn't because they're incapable, it's because they're not looking. They don't think to ask if the wall they're leaning against might, in fact, be a door. Questioning is an act of rebellion against inertia. It's the mental muscle that nudges you to tap on surfaces others walk past, to tug at loose threads others ignore. The obvious approach is to ask, how do I solve this problem the way it's always been solved? It's efficient, it's validated, and it feels safe, but it's also crowded. The second door approach starts earlier, at the root. What if the whole way we're framing the problem is wrong? It's asking, what if there's another angle, another axis, another dimension entirely? It's refusing to be confined by inherited blueprints. History is rich with breakthroughs born from what-if moments. In the 1960s, while researchers tried to make computers bigger and faster to handle more data, a young engineer named Douglas Engelbart asked a different question. What if instead of making humans adapt to machines, we made machines that adapted to humans? That question led to the invention of the computer mouse, an entirely new way of interacting with technology that no one had even considered necessary before. Engelbart didn't just find a better front door, he created a second door that redefined the entire building. What if is a compass, not a roadmap. It doesn't promise immediate answers. Often it leads to dead ends, false starts, or ideas that seem ridiculous at first. But the willingness to sit inside that uncertainty, to stay curious even when clarity is out of reach, is what eventually reveals paths others miss. It's in the fumbling, the wandering, the willingness to be wrong, that the magic happens. Elijah learned that asking better questions didn't guarantee instant success. Sometimes it made the journey messier, slower, and harder to explain to others. But it also made it infinitely richer. His inventions weren't just improvements, they were leaps into realms others hadn't thought possible. Every great innovator, every seismic shift in history, began not with an answer, but with a question daring enough to unsettle the status quo. Living with a what-if mindset demands humility. It demands admitting that the current solutions might not be good enough, that you might not know everything, and that's the point. It demands the courage to let curiosity outweigh the fear of looking foolish. It demands seeing possibility where others see finality. The next time you hit a wall, whether it's a personal dilemma, a career block, or a creative challenge, pause before battering the door harder. Step back. Tilt your head, whisper to yourself, what if there's another way? You might find, just beyond the obvious, a hidden staircase winding upward. you might realize the wall isn't a wall at all. It's a disguised gateway, waiting for someone audacious enough to ask the right question. Second doors don't announce themselves. They're summoned by the persistent wonder of a mind unwilling to settle. The second you ask, "What if?" you've already started turning the key. Breakthroughs begin by questioning the assumptions everyone else accepts. What if thinking opens hidden doors and undiscovered possibilities? Curiosity, not certainty, leads to innovation. Where in your life are you accepting the obvious solution without questioning if a second door exists? Choose one problem you're currently facing and brainstorm 5 what if questions that challenge the conventional approach. Chapter 4. Mental Models That Trap You in Front Door Thinking. When Jordan joined his first tech startup, he was hungry to impress. The company had strict playbooks for everything: sales scripts, marketing funnels, development sprints. He dove in, eager to master the system. At first, success came easily, metrics ticked upward. Praise followed. But when the market shifted and customer needs evolved, the scripts didn't work anymore. Jordan tried harder, doubling down on the old strategies. He couldn't understand why nothing clicked. It wasn't until the startup collapsed that he realized the truth: he wasn't solving problems. He was trapped inside a mental model that no longer fit reality. Mental models are invisible frameworks we use to interpret the world. They shape how we see problems, how we approach solutions, and how we define success. In many ways, they are shortcuts, efficient, reliable ways to navigate complexity. But the same models that guide us can also blind us. They turn into cages when we forget they are just one way of seeing, not the only way. Front door thinkers worship their mental models. Second door thinkers challenge them. The danger is that mental models work well until they don't, and when they break, most people don't question the model. They blame themselves, or others, or external circumstances. They push harder instead of seeing differently. Jordan's model said, "Follow the script, win the deal." When that no longer worked, he didn't question the script. He questioned his own worth. He mistook the failure of a framework for a personal failure. That is the trap. Second door thinking demands that you treat mental models like tools, not truths. A hammer is perfect for driving nails, but useless for sewing fabric. Knowing when to put down the hammer is as important as knowing how to swing it. It requires asking, "Is this model still serving me?" And, more daringly, was it ever? Entire industries have collapsed because leaders clung to outdated models. Kodak invented the first digital camera but shelved it to protect their film business model. Blockbuster laughed at Netflix's mail order idea because their model was late fees and in-store rentals. These giants weren't defeated by external forces. They were defeated by their own stubbornness to see that their map no longer matched the territory. The deeper danger is that mental models don't just exist in businesses, they exist inside us. They are the silent scripts that say, "Success looks like this. This is the right way to live. Real jobs have benefits. Creativity is risky. Security matters more than passion." They are inherited from family, culture, education, and media. And because they are invisible, they are powerful. We act them out without even realizing we had a choice. When Jordan started his next venture, he approached it differently. He built models, yes, but he treated them like experiments, not commandments. Every quarter he sat down and asked, "What assumptions are we making? Which ones no longer fit the world as it is?" He celebrated model-breaking moments, seeing them not as failures but as evolution. His second startup thrived not because he found a perfect model, but because he never fell in love with one. Second door thinking isn't about rejecting all mental models. It's about holding them lightly, questioning them often, and discarding them when they outlive their usefulness. It's about realizing that sometimes, the biggest innovation isn't creating something new, it's seeing that the rules everyone else is playing by are optional. Next time you feel stuck, frustrated, or defeated, don't just push harder against the wall. Ask yourself, what invisible model am I following here? What if it's wrong? The key to the second door might not be building a better battering ram. It might be realizing you're pounding on a wall that doesn't even have to exist. The freedom to think differently begins the moment you recognize the cages you forgot you were living inside. Mental models can guide or trap you, depending on how tightly you cling to them. Treat mental models as tools, not truths. Questioning your assumptions is essential to finding second doors. What invisible mental model might be limiting how you see your current challenges? Write down one assumption you're making about a current situation and brainstorm 2 alternative ways to view it. Chapter 5. Embracing failure as a signpost, not a stop sign. When Maya opened her first boutique bakery, she poured everything into it. She followed every expert's advice: premium location, beautiful branding, classic menu. For months, she scraped by, hoping for a breakthrough that never came. When the bakery finally closed, she felt humiliated. Friends avoided eye contact. Family urged her to get a real job. For a long time, she agreed with them. Until one night, scrolling through customer reviews she had ignored in her shame, she noticed a pattern. People hadn't been unimpressed by her bakery, they had been underwhelmed by the predictability. Good, but typical. One comment read, "Wish there were more creative flavors," said another. It wasn't that she had failed at baking, she had failed at daring. Failure doesn't mean you chose the wrong dream. Often it means you approached it through the wrong door. Most people treat failure as a final judgment, a flashing red light that screams stop. They internalize it, seeing it as proof they weren't good enough, smart enough, worthy enough. But second-door thinkers view failure differently. To them, failure isn't a wall, it's a map update. A giant arrow points out that the current path leads to a dead end, and that another path, usually invisible before, must now be found. Maya could have walked away from her dream entirely. Many do. They confuse the collapse of a method with the collapse of the mission. But failure, properly understood, isn't about who you are, it's about what you tried. It's feedback from reality. It's an invitation to ask better questions, not why am I not good enough? But what needs to change? Not why did I fail, but where's the second door? Some of the world's most iconic successes were once public failures. Walt Disney was fired for lacking imagination. Oprah Winfrey was told she was unfit for television. Thomas Edison famously said, "I have not failed, I've just found 10,000 ways that won't work." Each of them understood that failure wasn't a verdict. It was a clue. It was information only visible to those willing to look beyond their bruised pride and ask, what else could this mean? Second-door thinking reframes failure as essential data gathering. Every stumble, every dead end, every closed door teaches you something vital about the terrain you're navigating. Maybe the market needs something slightly different. Maybe your audience isn't who you thought they were. Maybe your timing was off. Maybe your methods were too safe, too derivative, too tethered to the front door everyone else was cramming through. Maya realized her true passion wasn't just baking, it was creating. So she reopened, but this time with a twist, a bakery focused entirely on wildly imaginative flavor combinations. Lavender honey scones, chili chocolate croissants, miso caramel cookies. She abandoned the conventional wisdom that said to play it safe to please the masses, and leaned fully into what made her unique. This time, customers lined up around the block. She hadn't changed who she was, she had changed which door she chose to walk through. Failure stripped away the illusion that she had to succeed by following the rules. It forced her to create her own rules, to step back, see the dead end for what it was, and ask where the hidden path might lead instead. Without that bakery's collapse, she would never have had the courage to unlock her true potential. When you fail, and you will, because everyone does, you stand at a crossroads. You can shrink, blame, and retreat, or you can use the wreckage as scaffolding, climbing higher than you ever could have from safe ground. Second doors often require a detour through failure, because failure teaches you to see opportunities you would have otherwise missed. Failure isn't your enemy. It's your scout, your guide, your ruthless but faithful mapmaker. If you listen closely, it will always whisper the same question: where else might you go? Failure isn't final, it's feedback and redirection. Second-door thinkers use failure to discover hidden opportunities. Your greatest growth often follows your greatest stumbles. What recent failure might be pointing you toward a second door you haven't noticed yet? Revisit one personal or professional failure and list 3 lessons or opportunities it revealed. Chapter 6. How Constraints Create Breakthroughs. On a freezing night in April 1970, Apollo 13's astronauts heard a sharp bang, followed by the chilling words no one on Earth ever wanted to hear. "Houston, we've had a problem." An oxygen tank had exploded, crippling the spacecraft. Dreams of a moon landing vanished instantly. Now, the only mission was survival. Engineers at NASA, faced with failing power systems, dwindling oxygen, and plummeting temperatures, had to find a way to bring the crew home using only the supplies already aboard. No resupply missions. No margin for error. Just the brutal clarity of absolute constraint. Within days, they built a life-saving filtration system out of nothing more than duct tape, tubing, and plastic bags. Innovation didn't happen despite the limitations, it happened because of them. Most people view constraints as obstacles, enemies to creativity. If only I had more time, they say. If only I had more resources, more help, more freedom. But second-door thinkers recognize that constraints aren't the enemy. They are the birthplace of brilliance. They force focus, ingenuity, and resilience. They strip away the illusion of infinite options and demand that you invent within the box, instead of endlessly waiting for a bigger one. When everything is possible, nothing feels urgent, options overwhelm. Abundance seduces you into delay and indecision. But when choices are stripped away, when survival or success hinges on resourcefulness, creativity sharpens to a blade's edge. The second doors that matter most are often hidden behind walls of scarcity, lack, and limitation. Only those willing to embrace those walls discover the openings embedded within them. Emma, an artist in a small town, used to dream of having a sprawling studio, endless supplies, and big city exposure. But for years, all she had was a cramped attic, second-hand brushes, and scrap materials. At first, she felt trapped by her circumstances, convinced that real creativity required real resources. But necessity forced her to experiment. She began mixing her own paints from natural pigments, creating textures by layering found objects into her canvases. The limitations pushed her into a style that no formal training could have taught. When her work finally caught the attention of a gallery owner, it wasn't despite her scarcity, it was because of the singular beauty born from it. Constraints force you to make decisions. They demand that you prioritize what matters most. They burn away perfectionism and expose raw, essential creativity. Second-door thinkers lean into constraints. They ask, "What can I do with what I have?" instead of waiting endlessly for the perfect setup. They realize that waiting for ideal conditions is just a sophisticated form of procrastination. In fact, many of history's greatest innovations arose not because people had what they needed, but precisely because they didn't. During World War II, rubber shortages led to the invention of synthetic rubber. In the early days of filmmaking, budget constraints birthed techniques that are now considered stylistic brilliance. Tight restrictions on film stock forced directors to think more visually, leading to masterpieces created with fewer resources but far more imagination. Constraints are accelerators of ingenuity. They are reality's way of asking, "How badly do you want it?" If you're willing to accept the limitations, to work inside them rather than resent them, you'll often find that they become the very thing that sets you apart. The next time you feel hemmed in by lack of money, lack of time, lack of support, pause before lamenting it. What if this limitation isn't a barrier but a gateway? What if it's the pressure that will force the diamond of your creativity to emerge? What if the constraint is the second door in disguise? Your greatest breakthroughs aren't waiting in the land of abundance. They are hidden inside the walls you keep wishing would go away. Constraints sharpen creativity and fuel breakthroughs. Embracing limitations often leads to more original and powerful outcomes. Scarcity isn't a curse, it's an invitation to innovate. Where in your life are you seeing constraints as barriers instead of as opportunities for innovation? Choose one current limitation you're facing, and brainstorm 3 creative solutions using only what you already have. Chapter 7. Navigating Doubt and the Fear of Looking Foolish. When Olivia decided to leave her stable corporate job to pursue her dream of designing sustainable fashion, her hands shook as she drafted the resignation letter. Everyone around her had opinions. Some were polite but skeptical. Others were openly critical. "It's risky," they said. "It's unrealistic. Why throw away everything you've built?" Beneath their words pulsed a deeper fear. The same fear that gnawed at Olivia late at night. What if they were right? What if chasing her dream only proved She didn't belong in the world she admired from afar. The fear of looking foolish can be more paralyzing than the fear of failure. It threatens not just your plans but your very identity. Second door thinking demands courage, but not the easy, cinematic kind. It demands the quiet, stubborn courage to endure being misunderstood, ridiculed, and doubted. Because the second doors rarely have flashing signs, they rarely come with crowds cheering you on. More often, they look like mistakes to those watching from the safety of the front door. And nothing tests resolve faster than the sneaking suspicion that everyone else might be right. The fear of looking foolish is deeply human. We are wired to seek belonging. For most of history, exclusion from the tribe meant death. That ancient fear still echoes in modern life, disguised as the need for approval. But innovation, originality, and second-door living require you to walk into the unknown without a map, and often without applause. They require a willingness to be the only one who sees the door while everyone else stares at the wall. Olivia struggled with the weight of their doubts, but she pressed forward. She spent nights designing, learning, and stitching prototypes by hand. Her early designs were met with polite smiles and patronizing advice. "Maybe you should make something more normal," someone said at her first show. But she listened less to the critics and more to the small, stubborn voice inside that whispered, "Keep going." That voice wasn't loud. It didn't shout over her insecurities, it merely refused to leave. Doubt never fully disappears. It lingers at the edges, waiting for weak moments. Even the most brilliant innovators and creators wrestle with it. The difference isn't the absence of fear, it's the decision to move forward anyway. It's understanding that looking foolish is often the price of seeing what others cannot yet imagine. History's heroes, scientists, artists, entrepreneurs, were often the subject of ridicule before they were celebrated. Galileo was branded a heretic. The Wright brothers were mocked for dreaming of flight. The early internet pioneers were dismissed as nerds tinkering with toys. Being laughed at is not evidence that you're wrong. Sometimes, it's evidence that you're early. Olivia's designs eventually caught the eye of a boutique buyer, who loved their boldness. Today, her brand is a rising name in sustainable fashion circles. She didn't succeed by silencing her fear. She succeeded by refusing to let fear dictate her choices. Every stitch, every show, every risk was an act of defiance against the pull to conform. The next time doubt whispers that you're foolish for trying, for dreaming, for daring, pause and remember. The fear of looking foolish is often a sign you're getting close to something real, something original. Something that hasn't yet been validated by the crowd because it's too new for them to see. Second doors are quiet. They wait in the shadows, invisible to those desperate for approval. But if you can withstand the awkwardness, the embarrassment, the loneliness of being different, you'll find a kind of freedom the front door crowd will never know. The real shame isn't in trying and looking foolish, it's in never trying at all. Fear of looking foolish keeps many from discovering second doors. Doubt is normal, but moving forward anyway is what creates breakthroughs. Courage means acting in the presence of fear, not its absence. Where are you holding back, because you're afraid of being judged or misunderstood? Take one small action today that feels risky or unconventional, even if it makes you uncomfortable. Chapter 8. Turning Rejection into Redirection. When Marcus submitted his first novel to publishers, he believed, naively, that his passion alone would carry it to success. He had spent 2 years pouring his soul into those pages. When the rejection letters started trickling in, each one felt like a small death. Some were polite but generic. Others were brutally specific. Derivative, unmarketable. No audience for this. After the 15th rejection, Marcus stopped writing for a month. He told himself it was pointless, that maybe he had been delusional to even try. Rejection didn't just bruise his ego, it struck at the heart of who he thought he was. Most people treat rejection like a verdict. A slammed door. Proof that the dream was foolish or the talent lacking, but second-door thinkers understand something different. Rejection is often redirection. It's not a statement about your worth. It's a statement about the current path you're on, and sometimes it's the world's way of nudging you toward the door you were meant to find. Rejection stings because it feels so final. Meteor cake. It weaponizes our desire for approval, magnifying every self-doubt already simmering inside. But rejection is rarely about you as a person. It's about fit, timing, framing, and context. It's about the front door being too crowded, too political, too narrow to recognize something unconventional. Often, it's the gatekeeper's limitations, not yours, that cause them to say no. Marcus eventually stopped asking, "Why don't they want me?" and started asking, "Where else might my voice belong?" He realized that his novel didn't fit the traditional mold because it wasn't supposed to. Instead of chasing approval from the same gatekeepers who had dismissed him, he began serializing his work online. Slowly, a loyal readership grew. People resonated with the authenticity and rawness that traditional publishers had deemed too risky. Within 2 years, his self-published collection topped bestseller lists, and those same publishers came knocking, eager to claim the success they had once rejected. Second-door thinkers view rejection as feedback, not finality. Every no contains data. Sometimes it's about the audience. Sometimes it's about the timing. Sometimes it's about how you're presenting your ideas. But almost always, rejection means there's a second door nearby, one that doesn't require permission to walk through. History overflows with stories of people who transformed rejection into revolution. Vincent van Gogh sold only one painting during his lifetime, yet his work now defines an era. J.K. Rowling's Harry Potter manuscript was turned down by a dozen publishers before one finally took a chance. Steve Jobs was fired from his own company, only to return years later and transform it into one of the most iconic brands on earth. They didn't succeed because rejection vanished. They succeeded because they refused to let rejection define them. Turning rejection into redirection requires resilience, the grit to stand back up when knocked down. But it also requires agility, the willingness to change course, rethink assumptions, and find a different angle of approach. It demands that you ask better questions, not about your worth but about your strategy. Marcus learned that the right audience was always there. He just had to reach them through a different door. He didn't compromise his voice to fit someone else's mold. He found the second door that honored the story he was born to tell. When rejection slams the front door in your face, it's tempting to internalize the shame. But what if that rejection is a signpost pointing you toward a path you wouldn't have dared to take otherwise? What if the no isn't the end, but the beginning of a better, truer story? The next time rejection comes, and it will, choose to treat it not as a wall but as a detour. A whispered invitation to look left when everyone else is staring straight ahead. Sometimes the most important yes is the one you give yourself. Rejection is often redirection, not a verdict on your worth. Every no contains feedback that can guide you to a better path. Resilience and agility are key to turning rejection into opportunity. What recent rejection could you reinterpret as redirection toward a second door? Choose one rejection you faced and brainstorm 3 alternative opportunities it might be pointing you toward. Chapter 9. Building your second door crew. Who you walk with matters. When Ethan first started dreaming about building a socially conscious tech company, he assumed the path forward was solitary. He pictured late nights coding alone, climbing the mountain of innovation by sheer force of will. But 6 months in, exhausted and disheartened, he realized something critical. He wasn't just lacking resources. He was lacking people. He needed allies who believed in second doors, who could challenge, sharpen, and embolden him when the road became unclear. Success wasn't just about finding a better idea. It was about finding better companions for the journey. The myth of the lone genius still permeates culture. The image of a solitary inventor or creator changing the world from a basement or a garage. But history tells a different story. Behind almost every great breakthrough stands a circle of fellow believers, mentors, critics, and co-conspirators. Steve Jobs had Steve Wozniak. Martin Luther King Jr. had a core group of strategists and organizers. The Impressionists, once dismissed by the art establishment, formed salons where they critiqued and inspired each other. Greatness is almost never a solo act, it's a symphony. Second-door thinking thrives in the company of those who understand its risks and rewards. Building your second-door crew means surrounding yourself with people who aren't shackled to conventional thinking. People who won't panic when the path isn't clear. People who will remind you, in your moments of doubt, that unseen doors are real, and often closer than you think. The wrong crew, however, can quietly sabotage second door pursuits. Skeptics dressed as realists, cynics disguised as mentors, well-meaning friends who urge you to be practical because they're too afraid to dream themselves. Their doubts can seep into your thinking, making you second-guess what once felt certain. Not everyone can see your second door. And that's okay, they're not meant to, but you must be ruthless in choosing who walks beside you. Ethan learned to listen carefully to the voices around him. When he shared his vision with one group, they immediately listed all the reasons it would fail: funding issues, legal hurdles, market saturation. Their concerns weren't baseless, but they were weighted toward fear, not possibility. When he shared the same vision with a different circle, entrepreneurs who had carved their own paths, the energy shifted. They didn't deny the risks. They simply believed risks were worth taking for the right cause. They asked sharper questions. They offered strategic advice. They cheered louder than his own doubt. Your second door crew should be made up of those who understand that second doors often look absurd at first glance. They know that every groundbreaking idea sounds crazy before it sounds obvious. They aren't afraid of your ambition. They aren't threatened by your courage. Instead, they amplify it. Building that kind of circle requires intentionality. It means seeking out mentors who have walked unconventional paths. It means forging friendships with fellow dreamers and doers. It means being willing to outgrow relationships that anchor you to the front door when your destiny lies elsewhere. Ethan's company eventually launched, not without setbacks, but powered by the collective resilience of his crew. When he wanted to quit, they reminded him why he started. When he doubted the second door's existence, they held the flashlight steady until he found it again. They didn't just help him succeed. They helped him become the kind of person who could see second doors for the rest of his life. The journey towards second doors is too treacherous, too disorienting, to walk alone. Choose your companions wisely, because in the moments when you forget what you're capable of, they will be the ones to remind you. And when the world tells you the front door is your only option, they will smile knowingly and ask, "What if there's another way?" Success behind second doors is rarely a solo journey. It requires the right people. The wrong voices can anchor you to fear. The right ones amplify your courage. Building a second door crew is essential for resilience and vision. Who in your life supports your second door thinking, and who might be quietly pulling you away from it? Identify one person who embodies second door thinking, and reach out to deepen that connection this week. Chapter 10. Microsecond Doors. Seeing hidden chances every day. Every morning on her way to work, Lila passed the same small coffee shop, tucked between towering office buildings. She barely noticed it. Like most people, she hurried past with her head down, mind already buried in the day's demands. But one rainy Tuesday, she ducked inside to escape the downpour. As she waited for her coffee, she struck up a conversation with the barista, who mentioned an open mic event happening that weekend. Lila, a closet poet who had never shared her work publicly, hesitated. It was such a small, casual invitation, it would have been easy to dismiss it as nothing, but something stirred inside her. What if this were a door? She said yes. The big second doors, the career pivots, the breakthrough inventions, the radical life shifts get all the glory. But most second doors start small. They appear as casual conversations, minor invitations, tiny risks that seem almost too insignificant to matter. They don't announce themselves. They don't come with guarantees, but they are everywhere, hiding in plain sight for those willing to see. Microsecond doors are the daily invitations to step slightly outside your comfort zone. They are the moments you're tempted to brush aside, but that, if embraced, can tilt the entire trajectory of your life. A handshake at a conference that turns into a business partnership. A chance encounter on a flight sparks a friendship. An offhanded comment that plants the seed for your next big idea. Tiny doors that swing open to reveal worlds you didn't even know you needed. The problem is, most people are so focused on their 5-year plan, their quarterly goals, their checklist of tasks, that they bulldoze past these micro-opportunities. They think second doors have to be massive, dramatic shifts. They miss the fact that most transformations start with a whisper, not a shout. Lila almost didn't go to the open mic. She almost convinced herself it wasn't important, that she was too busy, too tired, too unprepared. But she went. She stood on that small stage, heart pounding, voice trembling, and read 3 of her poems. The room was half empty. The lighting was bad. No one threw roses at her feet. But one person came up afterward, a local publisher, who invited her to submit work for a new anthology. That anthology led to more readings, more opportunities, and a slow but steady unfolding of a creative life she had nearly abandoned. Second door thinking isn't about waiting for the perfect moment to make a massive leap. It's about practicing the art of noticing the small cracks in the walls around you every single day. It's about treating every interaction, every invitation, every unexpected moment as a potential key. Not every micro door leads somewhere spectacular, but every time you walk through one, you sharpen your instincts. You cultivate openness. You remind yourself that life is not a closed system, but a constantly shifting landscape of possibility. The key is to stay awake, to resist autopilot, to train yourself to ask, is there a second door here I'm not seeing, even in the mundane? Especially in the mundane, because often, the door that changes everything doesn't look like destiny. It looks like coffee on a rainy Tuesday. Lila didn't become famous overnight. She didn't quit her job and become a full-time poet immediately. But she began living differently. She walked through more micro doors. She said yes to more chances. She built a life stitched together not by giant leaps, but by 1,000 small steps of courage. The world is full of second doors. Most people are too busy staring straight ahead to notice. But if you slow down, lift your eyes, and stay curious, you'll find them waiting, tiny openings. Quiet invitations, small hinges swinging wide the massive doors of your future. Second doors often appear as small 3, everyday opportunities. Staying awake and curious is essential to noticing microsecond doors. Big breakthroughs are often built from many small, brave choices. Where in your daily life might a small opportunity be inviting you to step through a second door? Say yes to one small, unexpected invitation or opportunity this week and see where it leads. Take care and be well.